Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for this conversation where we'll be discussing how to manage business risks in volatile conditions. I am your host, Kat Melheim. I'm the marketing and social media manager here at Algrano. Also, I'm known as RoasterKat on Instagram and YouTube. And we had this idea at Algrano for this webinar after hearing from a lot of roasters and producers that they're really uncertain about what to do with the current market volatility that we're experiencing in coffee right now. There's a lot of fear, a lot of confusion, and a ton of unanswered questions about what to do and how to handle the rising coffee prices, the impact it's having on businesses, and how to basically manage your business throughout this time. So we wanted to have a conversation where we're opening up a dialogue about this. The bulk of this webinar will really be a conversation between me and Raphael, and we're going to be talking about taking you through a bunch of different aspects of this. So first, we'll start out by exploring some big picture topics about challenges that roasters are facing, the volatility and categories of business risk. Then we'll move on to how roasters are reacting to these challenges and risks. And finally, we'll be moving on to kind of actionable steps, what you can take from this and move forward, ways roasters can control their businesses rather than react to the volatile conditions. So if you're a roaster and you're asking, what can I do? This is the perfect webinar for you. Again, quick note, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end. And without further ado, please welcome the CEO and co-founder of Algrano, Raphael Studer. Welcome, Raphael.
Thank you very much. I don't know how you do it. You're very used to this, Kat, but I mean, it's so weird. Everybody sees us and we don't see them, right? So, hi everyone. I'm calling in from Switzerland. We have a beautiful sunny afternoon and it's really hot here in my office. And I'm really looking forward because we have a hot topic too. Business risks. I'm an economist by education, so this is really deep in my heart that we were taught at least about managing a company is not just about leadership, finding the right people, the right business model and market fit. It's also about managing business risks. And when we started Algrano 10 years ago, it was a lot about our motivation was a lot about helping roasters and growers managing their business risk. Back in the day, roasters were not really willing to listen to our pitch, to be very honest. So I did a bit of research. We have presentations from 2015, 2016, 17, 18, where we were saying a lot of what we are repeating today already, but it has become very important. So I'm the CEO of Algrano. We are an online platform that connects roasters and producers since 10 years. We have staff around the globe, a few people in Latin America, Ethiopia, the US, UK, Northern Europe, etc. So we're very spread out, and we love what we are doing because we really believe that there is need of new models that support sustainable businesses on both ends of the supply chain. So yeah, we're really looking forward to this hour. And Kat said, please share your questions, share also your suggestions. I really hope that we also learn. And the other participants learn from you. There is roasters in the call, producers in the call. I just scrolled a bit through the attendee list, so we'll be really, really looking forward to the discussion as well, and keep our talking as short as possible.
Yes, awesome. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is ask you all a question. Let me see, how do I go to the next slide? There we go. So this is a Slido. Basically, use your phone to take a picture or use the QR code here. And we want to hear from you, roasters. What are the 3 biggest problems that your roastery faces in 2025? So you can just, take your phone, do a little QR and put those in there. And Raphael, you've done this a couple times, right? So far, you've heard from a couple different groups of roasters.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised about the first one appearing here. I think nobody in this call. Yeah, it's very interesting that Availability, okay. Availability seems important here. Pricing, we see pricing, costs, cash flow, volatility is mentioned.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. Coffee price increases. Wow, this is
Spot availability.
a lot of availability, a lot of quality. Availability and quality is important.
Race to the bottom, I see on there.
Mhm. So this is really interesting, right? So we're doing we're really doing this every time we get a chance to do it. And I can tell you my impression is that 10 years ago we had a lot about education of customers, about how to cup a coffee, about how to make sure a customer is willing to pay more for a specialty coffee. Where is my market? Is my market big enough? And a lot of these questions, 10 years later, there is a bit of disappearing, but just minor, right? Customer education is there, skilled labor is there. But the really big topics here are on the supply chain, availability, green pricing, quality, volatility. So it's a lot of supply chain risks that are challenges that are mentioned here, right? And there's still a few typings, so we keep this coming in, but I think this is really what I see. And it's interesting. What I'm always saying is the price per se, high, whether the price is high or whether it's low, that's not the issue as long as it's stable. We can plan, adjust, etc. The problem gets, and that's why I really like that word volatility in there. The problems arise when we do not have predictability anymore, right? And volatility is nothing else. If you look at the definition of volatility, it's nothing else than a tendency, a change to change quickly and unpredictable. And
Which
this
we
is
all just
really, sorry?
which we all just experienced a lot on
Exactly.
every side in every aspect of the supply chain.
Yeah, and I think what if I just interpret this a bit, we have not just experienced that on the sea market, we have experienced it on whether a coffee is available or not. We have experienced it whether a quality is available or not. And I think this is really the new challenge that specialty roasters are facing and haven't been facing in the past. Let's be honest. There was always enough coffee, always the coffee, the quality is available. The spot positions were huge of traders, etc. Prices were, I think the first 5 years of Algrano prices were flat, right? So there was no volatility at all. We were more looking at currency exchange rates in Europe than at coffee prices, right? And I think this is what has changed here. So this idea of the supply chain becoming the main challenge for roasters. And we also see in their EUDR. So it's not just homemade, it's also regulatory. So we start to get pressure from governments. We were in the food and beverage sector, right? So we start to get pressure from governments on how our supply chains should look like. And the supply chain really becomes an important challenge for roasters. And a lot of roasters are not aware of this. And then I finish because I'm already talking too much, right? The importance of green coffee, so the supply chain, increases with the size of the roaster. And then a lot of roasters are not aware of that. So they start with a 5 kilogram roaster, then they go to 15, then a 50, 80, 200, and hopefully even bigger, right, one day. So what happens is there's always one person roasting a batch during 12 minutes, right? But the batches get bigger and bigger. So coffee roasting actually scales pretty well. And where green coffee, if you look at an income statement of a small roastery, green coffee is maybe 25% of their cost. Green coffee gets to 75, 80% for bigger roasters. So the importance of challenges in the supply chain actually increases with your size of the roastery. And that's, I think, something we need to be aware, because all of us, or many roasters in this call, have been growing in the last 10 years. And with the growth, the importance of the supply chains have grown.
Yeah, and obviously, as you said, the importance of the supply chain, but then the risks associated with that, right? Like if you're roasting on a 1 kilo roaster and are roasting, let's say even 70 kilos per week, like if you miss a shipment, that's easy to replace. You can call around, you can call the next roaster down the street and say, oh, like, help me, please. Like, you know, if you're on good terms, hey, do you have an extra bag of Colombia that I can bring in? And you can solve that solution. But if you're at a much larger volume and a shipment is delayed or something defaults, that it's real much, much, much more difficult to find a solution for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Cool.
yeah, let's
So
thank
not
you.
surprised to see this appearing. That is really what has been. We had a poll, I think, lately at ZHW, the Coffee Excellence Center, during a talk. Very similar, very similar what the roasters mentioned. So yeah, it shows the importance of really starting to tackle these challenges.
Absolutely. So next we're going to move into breaking these risks down and categorizing them a little bit. So Raphael, let's check on the next slide. This is kind of on Algrano's side. We've broken down a lot of business risks that we've been hearing from roasters into different categories of risk that are caused by the supply chain. So let's work into this.
Yeah, let me make the segue from the challenges to business risk. So when does a challenge become a business risk? A business risk is defined as it has a potential, there's a possibility that your commercial entity, your company, your roaster, etc., can make inadequate profits or even losses, right, in the worst case, due to uncertainties. And I think this is really what's going on here. So we have the challenges we are seeing, the challenges that have been mentioned, and knowing that the importance of green coffee becomes more important, the bigger the roastery, etc., the more these challenges become important business risks to roasters. And they have potential to really destroy the financial viability and sustainability of a roastery. And that's why I think this talk is so important. And that's why, and I really want to make this segue because, or this link, because for many, it's just a challenge in sourcing coffee. But they're not aware that actually it can be vital to their company. And I think this is so. I don't want to make a drama here, but I want to make it clear that these challenges have to become the #1 priority of roasters right now. And before we talk about how we can go about them, yeah, let's put a bit of theory to it. So there is actually 4 categories of risk. And this is really coming from the literature that's not related to coffee because every business has business risk. That's the good news, right? Every industry has them. And the 4 categories are strategic risk, financial risks, operational risks, and legal and compliance risks. And I think the bad news, so the good news is there's all these risks exist in all businesses. The bad news is the supply chain really plays into all these categories as a roaster. And just giving you a few examples here. So strategic risk, if you're buying from a spot list, and let me make here an example. When we started Algrano, I went to the London Coffee Festival. I know you're calling from London right now, so I went to the London Coffee Festival, and there were amazing coffee roasters, all different packaging, all different, brand names, brands, appearances. But then I looked at the coffees they were selling, and I can tell you there were around 5 coffees that I saw over and over and over again. And why? Because all of them bought the most expensive top 5 coffees in the industry that were available on a spot list in the UK and were actually selling them. So the supply chain plays a key part in your differentiation as a roaster. Which coffees are you buying? Which qualities? Which stories are you telling? Etc. 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 So that's #1. So supply chain plays into differentiation, which is a strategic risk. Then financial business risks. So we have. I mean, I think this is the easiest one, right? We mentioned price volatility. I mean, if your purchase prices are not predictable, you cannot predict your sales prices, you cannot predict your profits, you don't have a budget, right? So what's the budget for 2025 for a specialty roaster that is buying spot coffees, that doesn't know what's the price tomorrow, today, after tomorrow? And I think this is the death for any company if you cannot budget, not plan, because then you will not be able to know how much you can invest. You will not be able to know how much you can spend in marketing, in variable costs that actually drive your business forward. So that's an easy one. Operational risks is about visibility of your supply chain. So this is what you mentioned, Kat, just before about my coffee is delayed. I have no visibility whether it's arriving. I have no visibility whether the right quality is arriving, etc. So that's really, that is, I mean, I believe that's one of, next to financial, certainly one of the most important ones to consider, because if you don't have coffee, your chimney is not smoking and you're not
You
making.
can't be a roaster if you don't have
Exactly.
coffee.
So this is key. And of course, there are other operational risks, right? Your roaster can burn, etc., but that's not related to the supply chain. So there's many other risks that could play into. And you know, this is really interesting. Just making here this point. I'm sure roasters have a plan to mitigate the risk that the roaster does not burn. So they clean it, right? Weekly, RoasterKat has beautiful videos about it, by the way. So but that's the thing, right? You have a plan how to minimize your risk or your operational risk of a burning roaster.
Yeah.
You do not have, most of the roasters do not have a plan how to mitigate the risk of late deliveries, qualities that are not arriving, etc. And we need contingency plans. We need plans, right? That's basically the point here.
And as you've said, like that, it hasn't really been an issue in the past, in the recent past.
No,
We
no,
haven't
no, no.
needed
This
these.
is the thing, right? Roasters have been outsourcing most of those risks to traders in the past, and traders were managing them, some better, some worse, and I think now it all falls on us because the challenges have become so big that traders cannot absorb them anymore. And some traders even were not good at managing their business risks and went bankrupt right in the last 18 months. And then you're alone as a roaster. So that's basically the situation we're in. And that's why this topic became so important. So the last topic, legal and compliance risks. This, you know, we founded a startup ourselves, right? We founded a company ourselves. So this is the thing you don't want to think about in the beginning, right? This is really you don't want to think about. So I had two moments where I started to think about that. One was when I married a lawyer, and she started to tell me like, do you have your legal risk under control? I'm like,
Internet.
right? So, and the second one was really when the government started to put regulations on the supply chain, and you know, it's a fact that if the first one people will point at whether you made a mistake or not, voluntarily or not, is your brand if your coffee does not fulfill the compliance, regulatory compliance of the different governments, the different selling markets you're in. And I think that's just the fact that, you know, your brand reputation, it's very hard to value it, but it's basically the core to your business. And if you lose that one, so the last one is maybe the one that we think the least about, but it can really be decisive for the future of your company. Yeah, so these are the four categories, and I believe we all understand how the supply chain plays in all of them, and that's basically, yeah, adding some theory to it and hopefully guiding also when you start, you know, ideally tomorrow or tonight you sit down and you say like, okay, what risks do we actually have, you know? And maybe these four categories: strategic, financial, operational, legal, and compliance help you to think also outside of the supply chain, of course, but to really come up with a comprehensive list.
Yeah, well, and I think it also for roasters helps put things in boxes. It helps you see clearly. It helps you conceptualize what you might be experiencing as a roaster. Like I have all of these risks, or these things are happening to my business, and I don't even know how to how to sort through them. Because a lot of roasters started roasteries because they loved coffee, because they wanted to produce great coffee, because they wanted to work with producers, because they, you know, they many roasters didn't start because they wanted to create a airtight business plan and thought that be opening a roastery would be the best idea to do that. So I think that this is super, putting some context, putting some structure on this is really helpful to understanding and yet contextualizing our experience as roasters, and then being able to bring it forward. How do we solve these problems?
And this is really, this is why it's fun to be in this industry, because we have so many great entrepreneurs around us, whether at origin, whether at consuming countries, all been built really good companies, and because they're driven by purpose, just as you mentioned, right? They're driven by purpose, and that what makes up good brands, right? And that what makes up passion, and I think that's why also why so many specialty roasters have been successful in the past. And I think it's exactly the point. It's like, okay, how do we make sure that we keep these good companies out there? Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, so that leads really well into the next slide, which is another poll, another Slido here, asking you all, what advice would you give to other roasters facing these challenges? Another way to put this is like, what are you doing to try and mitigate these risks right now? Yeah, what are you doing, or what would you tell other people to do? Good advice.
So I'm super glad, by the way, just so when we started, we had around 80 participants. Now we're above 100. So people are not dropping out, Kat, until now. So that's good.
We're interesting enough to keep them hooked. Loved it. Love to hear it. I don't know if the webinar caught it, but I dropped out for a second. My internet cut out for like a brief moment. So if I'm glad that that didn't, throw a wrench in the presentation. You did a great job working through it.
Plan ahead. Wow. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Big. Obviously, many people have said that. So if anybody who doesn't know how Slido works, it pretty much is a word cloud. And if the more people who say the same thing, the bigger those words become. So I'm not like designing or highlighting or selecting anything to show bigger or in any configuration here. So plan ahead is clearly in the middle and larger than everything else. Now, also cash flow management. So that means that more than one person has said that, and it's clearly a bigger, yeah, there you go. Building relationships, forward contracting, knowing the seller, forecasting, forward buying, connecting, building relationships.
Relationship with producers.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really interesting, right? Because what we're so and just let me just add here one thing from the literature as well. When you read literature, why good companies go bad, right? And there really there is tons of articles, but where they agree all is that companies and their managers or leaders or founders have the tendency to react to new challenges, to structural change in their business environment by doing just what they have been doing in the past. So they use the same successful routines, the routines that brought them the business success, to answer to these new challenges. So a really simple example as a roaster would be like, oh, I don't, what have we been doing in the past? We didn't adjust prices, sales prices of roasted coffee. Why? Because we were afraid that others are not doing it and we're losing market share, and we were absorbing little price fluctuations, right, through our margin. This was common practice in the specialty roasters industry. If you do this today, if this is your routine that was successful in the past and you would apply this today in the current environment, your company goes bad, right? That's clear. So what you don't want to do, or what this new, I don't know, supply chain 2.0, these new challenges, these new business risks you're facing, what I really want to stress is it's not enough to react the same way you have been reacting in the past. So, I think it's key that we agree, or you don't have to agree, but I think it's key. It's
Key
key.
for
Or
us to
my key
share from where
message
we
of this
stand.
call, my key message of this call is like, it's really, really a new situation that needs new tools. And what I'm super happy to read here is right that people are talking about planning, building relationships closer to the source. Get to know your supply, get to know, control your supply. Because planning, cash flow management, get closer, building relationships. What this is control over the supply chain. You're moving away from outsourcing your control to in-housing your control over your supply chain. That's the recipe. And that's exactly all what is written here is exactly this. And I mean, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, for
This is
sure.
good.
Yeah, and it kind of points to me towards managing rather than reacting, like being
Correct.
proactive, being ahead. I mean, plan ahead, literally there. But managing and, as you said, control your supply chain, rather than reacting, because the world around us is obviously constantly changing. It's unpredictable, it's volatile. So you have to manage the things you can in-house, as you said.
And this is really interesting. So we were talking about roasters growing, right? We were talking about the specialty coffee industry is growing, so roasters have been growing. When you look at what grown-up roasters are doing, they're controlling their supply chains.
Hmm. Hmm.
They know where the coffee is coming from. They have their feet on the ground, etc., etc. So what we have maybe missed a bit, or the train we have missed because things worked out well, was really going. We have been growing as roasters, but we have not adjusted our supply chain strategies to the grown-up roasters. And I think this is also. Yeah, a part of the process of the stage of the companies we are in now.
Yeah. For sure. And that leads into our next slide, finding business partners at origin to build direct relationships, because you're not the only ones. The roasters clearly aren't the only ones facing these risks.
No, I agree. I agree. So, look, when we started Algrano, we started it because we saw that we lived in Brazil, right? We lived in Brazil. We were surrounded by coffee producers. We realized they have 3G smartphones, and we realized that they have been suffering, or they didn't have a partner that took the volatility away from them. They
Mm.
were exposed to the volatility. And
Roasters had the traders, but
sorry,
roasters had traders to manage some of the volatility, but producers
exactly. But producers
were
didn't.
absorbing it all themselves. And it's
Exactly.
just hard to
Producers.
manage.
Exactly. So the problems that roasters are experiencing now of volatile prices, not knowing who is buying, selling, all these things they producers have been experiencing the whole thing. So why have producers been pushing so hard for direct relationship with roasters? Because they saw the value in having a partner, in understanding, having predictability in their business. And I think what we observe now, and this is really this was why we built Algrano, right? That was the driver, empowering, scaling this direct trade relationship for producers, that they get more predictable incomes, that they can start planning, investing, etc., and building brands, etc. So now we see that the roasters are experiencing it as well, and I know it's tough, it's a tough environment, and we're struggling, but let's just, if we zoom out a bit, it's a great opportunity for the industry because we have now two partners, the roasters and the producers, experiencing the same problems, and both bring, if we are able to bring them together, if they meet each other, if they find the right business partners in each other, the shared values, etc. If we find that, we can create that, then basically I'm sure we are going in a very, very sustainable future in coffee. And that's really the instrument that was mentioned before on the slide, right? Like controlling the supply, going to origin is nothing else than finding business partners at origin that share your values, that and I'm talking voluntarily about values, not about quality, not about size, not it's about values, because if you share the same values, you're real and understand that you're together producing a product and you want both to make that product successful, you create a very robust chain. And I think this is the core. This is the
Yeah.
core. And I know this is, let me be honest, this is time intensive. It's easier to call someone and buy 5 packs on a spot position. That's easier. This is some dating involved. You need to talk to people. You need to find the right partner, right? That's fun also, right? And once you found it, it's easier than ever, right? Because it gives to both of you predictability. It gives to both of you the right qualities, the right coffee at the right time at the right price. And
Sure.
that's the goal here.
Yeah, it's like you're doing the harder work up front to establish a secure supply chain because yeah, I mean, bringing it back, producers' biggest risk for their coffee is that they don't sell it. There's nowhere for it to go, or they don't sell it for enough of a profit that they can continue to be in business. Roasters' biggest risk as far as supply chain is not having green coffee. If you don't have green coffee, you can't sell it.
Yeah.
And so if you can connect those two dots, if roasters can sell their green coffee for what it takes to continue to run their business, and roasters can buy that coffee for what it takes to run their business, like it's solved right there. And of course, that also doesn't mean, that doesn't mean that shipping delays don't happen. That doesn't mean that other business risks aren't also involved, but it takes a big chunk out of that unpredictability.
That's exactly, you make a very important point. The risks are still there, but you manage them because suddenly you have visibility, suddenly you have transparency, suddenly you have the control. And if you have the control, you are managing the business risk and you're seeing them appearing before they happen. And that enables you to take contingency measures. That's the whole game, right?
For
That's
sure. Well, yeah. And as a roaster, if you can hear from a producing partner that you're working with 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year before coffee is supposed to arrive, you can know if they're facing weather related challenges. You can know if there are transportation challenges. You can understand what's happening there rather
Yeah,
than
as a
hoping.
roaster, I should be aware of whether Peru starts harvesting earlier or later. I should be aware of, and if I'm aware of this, I'm 5 months ahead, aware of whether my coffee will arrive on time or not, right?
Yeah.
And
It enables you to plan ahead.
this gives me time to find new measures and new supply chains or new coffees if I need, if the coffee is late, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's kind of brings us to the point again that direct trade has moved on. Do you want to say more about this part?
I think that direct trade has been for many years has been looked at a marketing tool by roasters. So
Mm.
I've been traveling and I know that producer, or has been seen a way of getting to nice origin stories. But
I've seen this name on a spot list 3 years in a row, and I bought it from the list 3 years in a row.
yeah, so direct trade, how we say it internally at Algrano, we call it direct trade. Should only a coffee should be called direct trade if the producer told the roaster this is direct trade. Then I think that's a good way to look at it. But it's not about the definition. It has moved on in the sense of that it has become, thanks to the technology, thanks to the also the development in the origin countries, it has become a really resilient, easy way of trading. 10 years ago, roasters were afraid of, can I trust this producer? What happens if stones arrive? Blah, 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 blah. All these fears. And we have passed that, we have really passed that stage, right? And I think this is why this slide says direct trade has moved on. It has become a real new way of buying coffee and managing your supply chain as a roaster. And I think this is, and we should stop now so that we get a bit of Q&A and opinions, I think. But I think what really is to take away from today, or what I would wish you take away from today is like the main challenges roasters are facing today are related to supply chains, number one. These risks in the challenges in the supply chain are so volatile, are so big, are so important that they become business risk, which can eventually make good companies go bad, basically. I think that's number two. And number three is that we need to build tools to manage our supply chains that help us get control over the supply chain. And the obvious way, we don't need to do hundreds and 500 actions. The obvious way is to get closer to origin, to build relationships at origin, to be in control of the supply. Where is it coming from? At which time, which quality, which price? And for this, there is many ways this can be done. You can travel, you can meet people on Instagram, you can use platforms, etc. But I think this is the key. This is the key message.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, yeah, everybody, please put your questions if you have any in the Q&A, and we will start going through them. Yeah, great. This is so much fun. I'm having so much fun. All right, first question we've got is, what do you think are the main historical trading practices that need to be eliminated or reduced for producers and roasters to thrive?
Oh.
All of them?
No. So I think there's a few things that need to be there. So very simple, very simple. A producer does often not have an importing license into the US. A roaster does not have a credit line to buy coffee for a year directly from a producer, but the producer needs the cash immediately because they have been producing this coffee 12 months. So there is services that are needed to make sure that roasters and producers thrive. But I say it that way. It's a service. It's, a credit line, it's a shipping service, it's an insurance on quality, etc. And I think those services will still be needed. But it's basically an infrastructure that needs to exist that people can use. And think about electricity, right? There's somebody producing electricity, somebody consuming electricity, and there's an infrastructure that ships that and finances it on the way, etc. And this is what trade needs, what coffee trade needs. And this is basically this division, or this is what Algrano has built, is this infrastructure. So what has to stop? Because this is the question, right? I think what needs to stop is the possession of coffee in the chain. So buying, owning, transporting, storing, etc., selling. There is no need that DHL owns your parcel that is sent from A to Z. There is no need that somebody owns your coffee that is shipped from producer to roaster. And I think this is what needs to stop. And that's the business model of traders, right? And I think this business model is actually leads to the information asymmetry in the chain, leads to the hard traceability, leads to wrong incentives of buying low, selling high, etc. So this needs to stop.
Yeah. With the connectivity that we have now, with the ability to like meet each other at global events, connect, as you said, on Instagram or WhatsApp or anything, the things need to change in that way to open up that transparency. Um, and yeah, I agree with everything you said. Um, Great. Another question. Will producers stop doing the additional work and incur additional risk to supply specialty coffee when they can simply benefit from the high commodity price? I mean, obviously that's a question for producers, and some might not. I think this kind of goes back to what you were saying about shared values. If there are coffee producers who share the value of creating specialty coffee, high quality specialty coffee, you know, they'll be insulated from these high prices, especially if they receive the benefit of having a roaster who will pay what it takes to cover their cost of production and to benefit their farm. I don't know.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Mhm. No, I agree. I agree. I think I would also turn the question around. Are roasters still willing to pay premiums for sustainability? Are roasters still willing to pay premiums for quality? Because if they are, then there will be a continued interest in producing these. But of course, if we think like, "Ooh, the coffee is already as so expensive, I will not pay for a certification, or I will not pay for this additional," then of course we will also create the supply to react. So I think it's on both sides. It's not. I think this is really really key.
Yeah, for sure. I love that flipping it on its head because as we've kind of alluded to, but haven't fully said, like producers have been on the short, well, I guess we have said producers have had the majority of the risk this whole time. And roasters are now just starting to kind of feel the squeeze of that, which is why which is why roasters are starting to really talk about it. But yeah, so roasters have to take a share in that and in creating or enabling the system as it has um, existed for so many years.
Alex just, and I think, oh, I like it. I think Alex is an economist too because he starts putting out really, really fun stuff like price elasticity. This is really interesting. So the there is if you look at the because you're mentioning the cup of coffee, if we break it down to our, I don't know, what is it, 7, 12 grams in a capsule, 7 in an espresso, 12. I mean, honestly, the price raise is minimal in your cup.
Mm.
And I think this is also key. This is also the story that I think some roasters are telling really well to their customers. That by the way, prices are there, but for you, it means, in your daily coffee consumptions of 3 cups, it means $1 or
Mhm.
whatever, right?
Mhm.
Or even less, way less actually. So I think this is really what we should reflect on. So I think for the consumer itself, it's of course the kilogram bag or the pound bag looks more expensive, but in the cup, the price range is quite small.
Yeah, for sure. Here's a really cool, really nice question. I think that also is actionable. What tools do roasters use to forecast and predict green usage so we know what we're needing to buy in 6 to 12 months from now?
Yeah, and I think there also technology, right, in the last 10 years has done so much for roasters. Whether you look at, there's different roasting softwares out there that offer roasters predictions. There is on Algrano, all the contracts we see are we predict actually how quick you're running through it and when you will end up and when you need to rebuy, etc. So there's a lot of tools there, and so I would not just there's a lot of tools there. Yeah. There is a lot of tools, and I think it's worthwhile investigating which is the best for themselves. Some are very sophisticated and integrate your online sales, and others are just looking at what you're roasting, speed and number of roasts, etc. So I think there is really good technology for it, and I would really start using this, yeah, because that's the first step to then start planning.
Yeah. You can't plan ahead if you don't have predictions for what you'll need in 6 to 12 months from now. And I think that, I mean, I know a number of roasters who have just built their own Google spreadsheets to try and like, predict to try and create algorithms or models to predict their like year over year sales. But that is, I mean, and if you know how to do that, great, good for you. But also, yeah, worth mentioning, Algrano has baked into our platform prediction tools, usage tools, notification tools when you get below a certain bag count. So yeah, there's technology out there that's available. This kind of leads into another question a bit, which is how can a roaster transition from spot to forward buying? like period. How does a roaster go about doing that?
Um,
That's a question for a consultant.
no, because it's not so difficult, right? I mean, many have done it, right? Hundreds of roasters have done it, so it's not so difficult. But how I would go about it, I thought there's many ways, of course, but how I would go about it is I would really think so. First, you need to be clear that if you buy one bag from a producer, you don't get the importance and the attention you maybe deserve, right? Or you would like to have. So I think it makes really sense to look at your coffees also that are key for your revenues. So your main blends, etc. So you look at them and you think of it like a business plan. So what will happen to this Brazilian coffee in the next 3 years? Will I buy more? Will I maybe use it also as an organic coffee? Will I use it as a filter at some point? Whatever. So think about what this coffee is. Then think about your brand. People always reduce coffee buying to quality. I think this is because this is how we bought coffee from the spot list. But what you want to create is additional value. And the additional value create by understanding your brand values and having a coffee that reflects your brand values. So give you an example. So there is a family roastery, 100 years in the business. How cool if they start sourcing from family business, 100 years producing coffees. Wow. There is suddenly a story, right, that can be told. And the differentiation again that we spoke about is there, right, from the market. So don't just think about the quality, because quality you will find. Suddenly you have actually you have so much more choice suddenly, right? Because you go with origin. You have all the Brazilian coffees are open to you, right? Not just the 5 from the spot list. So you have the whole choice. So think about what you're looking for in terms of brand values, in terms of what your coffee will evolve to in the future, volume-wise, etc. And then really start dating. Identify 3, 4, jump on a call, start cupping the coffees, and then yeah, take a decision. And this is it. And I think after maybe 3, 4 weeks, you have switched your coffee from spot to origin. So I think it's not a big effort. It is some effort. It is some stuff that has to be done, but it's not big effort.
Yeah. And then you have to like be able to or be willing and able to kind of manage the in-between time because
Yeah,
forward buying takes months before your coffee is there. So you have to
sure. It needs then to
build in
be
that.
harvested. It needs to be shipped, of course, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's not
But you
hard.
have been buying spot coffee, so you will be able to get
Right. Yeah, 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 for sure. Maybe we have time for one more question, two more maybe. Do you see any in the chat that you're itching to
just see
into?
that there is a queue. So people are using the chat and people are using the Q&A. So let me just look at the chat quickly.
Sure. Well, here's one that I can do quick. Somebody asked, what do you think the C market will do, and what's the best way to track and predict? If we knew that, we would we would have
We
all
will
the
not be doing
we
this
would have a
webinar.
crystal ball. Yeah, we would not be doing an educational webinar to share that information. I mean,
No,
that's the difficulty with the C market, right? Literally, no one knows, no one can predict what will happen, and that's where the volatility like therein lies with the C market price completely.
that's the thing. Volatility is unpredictability, right? And this is it. And as soon as you start taking guesses, you put yourself actually really at risk, right? But there's really interesting mechanisms, and we start offering this also to roasters and producers about you buy a coffee, you have a fixed relationship with a producer, you have an agreed price, but you buy the insurance through Algrano. It's a financial product that Algrano buys for you, but it's an insurance basically that if prices would drop, you would benefit from a drop in the prices. And I think there is really interesting mechanisms we can use. So the C market, as evil as it is with its volatility, there is also some financial products that can be really interesting to basically make sure that you stay competitive in the market. And this has nothing to do with speculations. It's really really a price insurance. Yeah. So there is some interesting stuff there. I'm happy to explore this if in a second webinar if there is interest for that. So there is an interesting one about what other news sources, publications, authors, etc. do you recommend to learn from that best expand our knowledge base on volatile supply chains? There is a book that I really suggest to read.
We also have a question.
Yeah, sorry, Kat.
We also have questions in the Q&A.
I will just
Yeah.
type a message here for all of you. A book that the world for sale. I think is a book to read about commodity trade, about supply chains, about structural change in the supply chains. And I think this is really any roaster should know about that, because this is really what is going on and where you are sitting in the middle of it.
Very cool. We have also an answer from a producer about answering how to transition from spot to forward. Start with one coffee. Start
Correct.
with and go from there. Great. Do you see any other ones that here? Somebody's asking, what's the book title again? It's called The World for Sale. It's in the chat that I think you can all see.
Yeah.
The World for Sale. Yeah. All right.
No, there is someone called like me, Studer. I don't know Florian Studer yet, but
Your long lost brother?
it's interesting. This is a question about the business model of Algrano. You know, we really try to build.
So the question, other people can't see the question.
I'm sorry.
The question is, how do you ensure that coffee roasters, after establishing a trading relationship with a co-op through or producer through Algrano, how do you ensure that they do not bypass the platform and source directly from the producer themselves? Yeah, go for it.
Genau. So the point is like we should create, why are you continuing to buying through Amazon? Or why are you right? So the thing is like because you get value out of it. And I think this is what you get value out of it. And one value can be trust. One value can be you get financing through Algrano, then you don't have the ability to finance your coffee yourself. So you get value, and then you're willing to continue using this platform. If we would just connect you, then honestly you can go to a coffee show, you can go to on Instagram. Yeah. But what you get on the platform is you understand who are trusted partners, verified partners. You understand whether they're still fair trade certified or not. You understand you get financing, you get visibility on when your shipments arrive, etc., etc. So there is a lot of value, additional value. That's why people stick with us.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think that's all the time that we have today. There are definitely plenty more questions that we didn't have time to answer now, which, I mean, I think that just leaves space for this conversation to continue. So everyone keep an eye out for more webinars. And actually, we do have, if you speak German, we have a webinar coming up soon with Kaffeemacher, if I say that correctly. I'm going to put the link to I'll put the link to the webinar in the chat. So this will be Raphael and Philip at Kaffeemacher they're in Switzerland. So the webinar will be in German language. Check that out if you speak German language. Otherwise, yeah, thank you everyone for joining. And I really hope this conversation gave you a bit more insight into the risks that roasters and producers face in this time. So everybody here, whether you're roasters, producers, or involved in the supply chain, you know what challenges you face and what you're going through. And I hope this conversation helped you understand maybe the other side, or at least that you're not alone in this, because we're all going through this at the same time. So yeah, last things I'll mention, if you speak German, Raphael will have that webinar with Philip of Kaffeemacher next week. And if you haven't signed up on Algrano's platform yet, you can do that. It's algrano.com. You can check out coffees available. You can connect directly, roasters and producers, and you can start taking control of your supply chain. So Thank you, everyone, and we'll catch you next
Yeah,
time.
thanks for hosting. Thanks for setting it up.
No, thank you. Thank you. To be able to hear from the CEO of a company about the real life implications and what people are going through on a day-to-day basis, I think is a really valuable thing. So thank you for taking your time and then joining us today.
Pleasure. Bye
All right.
bye. Bye,
Take
everyone.
care. Bye bye.